Would you welcome Paul and friends? That sounds like a band.
Right.
Paul and friends, and they'll introduce themselves to 1 Million Cups for Rockford.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Rockford. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Paul Logli. I'm the President and CEO of United Way of Rock River Valley. You're going to hear a lot of talk this morning about United Way, but we're really not here to promote or plug United Way. We're here to talk about what we're doing is kind of emblematic of what's going on with a lot of not-for-profits these days, and what's going on with donors, and the changing nature of philanthropy. And when people hear the term philanthropy, they think of some old guy sitting in a mansion dispensing millions of dollars to various charities, but that's not altogether true or complete. Anybody who gives, and I would believe that everybody here gives something at some time, whether it's time or money or sharing your talent, you're a philanthropist. And the way people are giving and the way organizations are seeking that support is changing over the years, over the last several years. We have a panel here today, and Linda Sandquist is here. She's a vice president of United Way. Next to her is Grant Schubert, who's a program impact manager for United Way. He does a lot of our programming work, and he's been very innovative in some of the things he's doing. That's the last nice thing I'll say about him today. And then Owen Stifler, who came to us from one of the local TV stations, and Owen is doing marketing and communications for us. He's been with us about, 6 months? I think he came in January. December. Okay. It's gone very fast, right? You just had a blast. Okay. So I think we're going to follow a bit of a lineup here. Linda's going to talk about a bit about the history of United Way, how we got here. Grant's going to talk about community change. Any organization you're supporting has got to be talking about some kind of change in the community. Heaven knows we've got significant challenges. Rockford is not alone in that, and we have to be working toward some really substantial change. And lastly, Owen's going to talk about the challenge we face now with so much diverse media. I'm probably one of the older people in the room, maybe the oldest, I don't know, but it used to be pretty simple, send out a letter by direct mail and you got a check back, right? Self-addressed envelope, right? There are 3 TV stations in town, 1 newspaper. Advertising was simple. And now, we're crossing a line. I was at a United Way conference a couple of weeks ago, and for the first time in 2020, the number of hours people view TV has been declining. That line's been going down, and the number of hours people spend on digital media has been going up. And in 2020, those lines will cross, and people will be spending more time on digital media than they will on what we consider to be conventional TV. That's a huge change in how people are getting information, as you know, and that's being led by people like my sons, age 32 on down to 24, and they're leading that kind of a charge. But anyway, I'll turn it over to Linda, who's going to talk about a little bit about United Way history.
Good morning. I'm going to tie everybody together here. So United Way does work with KFACT right now. We're very, very happy to be working with them. We fund some of the programs that Girl Scouts does, and Woodward, which is one of our major supporters, brews beer at the brew house for us and sells it, and we get $1 off of each one. So there you go. I always think that I'm kind of an aligner and a convener, so consider yourselves all convened. So one of the exciting things when we think about the history of United Way is that we are celebrating our 100th birthday this year. On December 4th, 1919, I like to tell people it was a dark and stormy evening, although I'm not really sure about that.
I was there. It wasn't that dark.
A group of people met at Memorial Hall, and they listened to the comments by someone called Robert Frost. It was not Robert Frost the poet. It was Robert Frost from Milwaukee, who came to tell this group of people about a new organization that was happening in Milwaukee. It was called a federation. And the purpose of the federation was to raise money in a collective way and then to dole it out to organizations in town who supported people, basically to the charities in town that were making a difference with people. So group of Rockfordians met. We know when Rockfordians get together, they can do great things. 100 years later, because of that meeting, we have a United Way that has collected over the last 100 years over $220 million and effectively doled it out to organizations like KFACT, like the Girl Scouts, like the Boy Scouts, etc. What we are finding now, and this is where you come in, and we really do hope to have an open discussion with you. What we are finding now is that our bread and butter has always been the workplace. 50 years ago, chances are when you worked someplace like Woodward, if you worked at J.L. Clark, if you worked at Rockford Products, management on down would tell all of you how important it was to support United Way. Here's your pledge card. Please fill it out. We're all in this together. It's really great to have 100% participation. Wow, look at this. What a great celebration we're having because we're all doing something great for the community. As we know, times have changed. A lot of the organizations that I mentioned are no longer here. We don't have corporate headquarters here anymore with top management who's all going to rally behind something. We also have people, frankly, who don't necessarily want to do what management tells them to do, and they have better ideas, perhaps, and need the independence to exercise that. We also find that people can give directly to charities now. If I want to support KFACT, I'm going to come to that gathering, which I understand that Grant is emceeing, so it's going to be awesome. But I can come and give my money directly. Or if I want to give to Girl Scouts, I can go online and push the Donate Now button. Or Girl Scouts has a development director who maybe is going to come see me, take me out for coffee, and tell me all the wonderful things that Girl Scouts is doing. So that's how, from a uniquely United Way perspective, we have seen things change in 100 years. We are very proud of the work that we do, but we know that it's time for us to start thinking about how we can make more of a direct impact in the community instead of simply doling out your dollars. Because quite frankly, you are all capable of doling out your dollars yourselves. We do tell people, and I firmly believe this, giving through a workplace campaign is still the most efficient and effective way for you to give back to your community. I have a son-in-law who's 29 years old. He lives in Chicago, but he gives through his company. I asked him why. He said, because when it's taken out of my paycheck, I never miss it. So there certainly are advantages to a workplace campaign, but we, as United Way, understand that people want to give differently, and we're hoping that some of the things that we're doing will entice people to do that, but we're also interested in learning how you want to give.
Yeah, so that's some history about the United Way, and I think I represent kind of the change in that 100-year philosophy. So I'm a second generation of impact management. I always say that it's a very strange title, right? You can tell that was cooked up in a boardroom somewhere. It's like I show up for work and I have all this impact to manage and I got to figure out who's going to do what. But it's not like that. I think I represent kind of this idea that United Way realized that they needed to get out of a boardroom. They needed to get out of spaces where neighborhood voices couldn't be heard, where unique opinions couldn't be heard, and they had to go listen to those and react. So what I've kind of been able to do over my 2.5 years at United Way is to sit at the table and listen to people in Ellis Heights and Midtown where we kind of said, hey, if we're going to make an impact, let's localize to a couple neighborhoods. And how can we change those neighborhoods? What can we do? How can we make sure that those voices that maybe have been on the margins in the past, maybe not been heard, on the third floor of a bank, could now begin to be heard? So I really kind of came in as the second generation, following in the footsteps of some great impact managers in the past, to try to figure out what we can do. And what we realized pretty quickly is that we had to be able to not only make an impact, but be able to talk about it. So in the past, United Way had given money, and I always wonder how much I could say. And it was always, we knew people were trying to do good. And we needed to be able to say, okay, what does that good look like? And I'm an example of a tool that to go out in the community and go, okay, you say it had a good impact or a great impact. What does that look like? How has this changed the trajectory of a student's life? Or how has this changed, the crime statistics in a neighborhood? So I really became that kind of barometer for how our impact looks. And looking for the specifics, looking for that level of transparency that maybe hadn't been able to exist because this level of management didn't exist before. So it's a way that we can make sure that our agencies are doing the best work they can, but then we can get more money for our agencies because we are able to market that and communicate it. Our impact has been focused in my tenure into 2 different neighborhoods, Midtown and Ellis Heights, and the schools inside of those footprints. And now our impact, as we begin to think about middle school more, is going to really be how are we changing the trajectory of middle school students going into high school and entering our community after high school. So I represent a level of specificity and impact that didn't exist previously. And I think it's a great example of not only our national and international brand, but our local brand to say, hey, we don't want to just sit on 100 years of history, right? Even though it's institutional positivity and the just great philanthropy and relationships throughout the community, but how can we be better? How can we adapt? How can we make sure? And we're a team. I'm just one kind of cog in that, and then there's obviously a bunch of people that help do that. Our relationship managers, our administration, our marketing, everybody works together. So I just we call them, it's boots on the ground is what we say, right? Like if you're in Midtown at Katie's Cup, that you'll see me there. If you're at Save-A-Lot on Friday morning, I'm getting energy drinks and talking to the cashiers. The kids at Ellis Elementary School know who I am. They know what United Way brand looks like because they see it on my T-shirt. And those are small things, but I think we wanted to make sure that we're embedding inside these communities because those relationships you build and the opinions you hear in those very kind of simple moments can really change, how things happen inside those neighborhoods. So that didn't exist previously, and I'm really proud to be a part of that history, and I'm proud to be a part of that future as well.
Is this on? Okay. I'm part of the marketing team. So basically, our responsibility is to take all this stuff that Grant's talking about and bring it out in the most easy way to our donors so that they see the work that we're doing is successful and impactful. So Grant kind of touched on it, but the stories that we share are both qualitative stories and quantitative stories. So qualitative stories being those success stories of the individual kids that he's out there talking to and building connections and relationships with. Grant will bring those stories to us as part of the marketing team, and we'll take those qualitative stories and put those out there in a bunch of different avenues, which I'll touch on in a second. But it's also important that we get the quantitative stories as well, which he referenced, which is things like calculating volunteer hours and how much our volunteers are helping out in the community. So that's actual measurable statistics that we can put out there, which donors obviously like to hear because that's an actual measurable impact. Whereas qualitative, that's kind of pulls at the heartstrings, which they equally want to hear those things as well. So to get those stories out there, there's a bunch of different avenues, and Paul touched upon this in his opening statements, but there's the traditional ways of doing it, which we still do. There's the physical direct mail, there's pamphlets, booklets, quarterly publications. I mean, you'll see Linda and Paul and Grant on the 3 local news stations talking about the work we're doing. We have op-eds in the Rockford Register Star. But as a nonprofit where the money that we get is completely from donors, we have to spend that money as best we can. So using social media is it's a huge tool for communicators across the spectrum, for-profit, non-for-profit, but it's specifically very helpful for us because Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube are literally free public spaces where millions of people spend basically the majority of their free time. So we have to make sure we use that space as best and effectively as we can because that's going to save us money that we can use towards actually making an impact in the community rather than having to share that impact when we have these free tools at our disposal. So I have some statistics that I wanted to share that kind of go into how important social media is. So, first of all, I don't think, and I don't know if Paul touched on this. I know that when he came back from the conference he was recently at, it was something that they stressed was just how important video content is on social media. So that's something that we're trying to transition to do more and more of. So the statistic is actually that video content is a more popular form of online content. So according to some studies done, I think these were from Galaxy Digital, got these from different publications, but studies show that viewers absorb 95% of a message when presented in video compared to 10% in plain text. So when we're we're doing a lot of text posts on Facebook and Twitter, obviously, because that's easy, but we're also trying to accompany that text with video that's literally showing what we're doing out in the community. Just last week, we had a bunch of students out painting a big mural behind one of our strong neighbors' houses, so we were out there all day getting pictures and videos of them doing that way. Even if we don't do it right the day of that they're doing the work, at least down the road, we can put that kind of stuff on social media, and our donors will see that, and it'll inspire them to give. So last year, online giving increased 23%, and it's just poised to keep on gaining more steam as we continue to go into the future. Obviously, cell phone usage is way up, so 40% of nonprofit website traffic comes from mobile phones. So not only is it important for us to have a website that's online for them to go to and find the work we're doing, but that website needs to be mobile friendly when you consider close to half of the people that are going onto our website are doing it on their phones. They're not doing it on, a desktop computer or laptop. And I think a lot of people might think that email is kind of not. Facebook has kind of absorbed some of that tool, but email is actually still a very, very important tool to us getting our word out there. So 27% of all giving globally has been inspired by email last year, which is second to social media. So it's the second biggest tool that we have to use as communicators and marketers. And so basically, from a marketing perspective, just staying on top of technology trends is one of the biggest things for us to do in our jobs, because that is where the communication space is going. Just like Paul mentioned, more people are getting their information and news and everything from the digital space rather than traditional television and media. So, we're just working hard to stay on top of technology trends and try to, stay ahead of the curve on that to get our word out to donors. Because obviously the better we communicate, like I said, it's free to do this through these digital assets, and the more and better we do it, the more donors are going to inspire to give, and that's going to obviously make a bigger impact in the work we can do in this community.
Thank you, Owen, Grant, and Linda. We have a member of our board who constantly refers to this time as perhaps the most disruptive time in history. And what you're hearing here is that even with old line traditional things like United Way, there's disruption going on. And we have to not just react, we have to also lead on some of that disruption. We are considered one of the principal philanthropies in the community. We're invited to a lot of tables, and we have to be intentional. I'm just delighted that I have a team at the United Way, a lot of younger people that understand more of the disruptive influences than I suppose I do in every case. But now we'd like to hear from you. Any comments or concerns that you have, any reaction to what we said, any insights you want to share with us in terms of what leads you, what touches your heart, or does your heart have to be touched, or do you just go to GoFundMe pages and just throw money around? It's like to know.
So United Way traditionally or historically has been kind of the clearinghouse. They've been the professional fundraisers and served as a clearinghouse for multiple charities across the community. It sounds like that model has changed. At this point, I think I understand that you're still acting as a clearinghouse for fundraising, to be the professional fundraisers in the room. But you're also, with the Strong Neighborhoods campaign now, getting directly involved, in essence, in on-the-ground operations yourself. Can you kind of clarify that split and how that's morphing?
Sure. Who wants to handle that? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I could handle it all, but I'll
So earlier I used convene and align. And I think that's really an important thing to understand, that that's what United Way is capable of doing. Because of our history with nonprofits, we understand the work that they do, and we understand what needs to be done in the community. So you're right, Mike, a couple years ago we looked at 2 underserved neighborhoods in the community and thought, wow, we really need to put more resources there. How can we do that? And we identified our strong neighborhood houses. And what we've done is worked with other nonprofit agencies, provided funding for them to be very, very specific and put programs in place in the strong neighborhoods. An example of that would be YSN, Youth Services Network. Every summer in Ellis Heights and on 8th Avenue, there is a summer-long program that Youth Services Network provides for kids who are maybe 5 to 12, ages 5 to 12. So these are kids who don't have the benefit of going to summer camp. They're not going to Magic Waters. They're in their neighborhoods. Parents may or may not be home. So Youth Services Network puts on basically a day camp every day in the strong neighborhood houses for these kids. We feel that's really a very relevant use of donors' money to help support children like that in neighborhoods where children don't have the opportunity. As we're evolving, we are going to be working, and actually Grant is right now, more specifically in the community's middle schools. What we have found is that middle schools are often very overlooked by the community. First of all, nobody liked being a middle schooler. Secondly, we're finding out that parents' engagement is way down during the middle school years, and kids are falling through the cracks, and by the time they get to high school, they are not on track to graduate, which is something that then contributes to our poor graduation rates in the community. So we have been looking at Lincoln for a year. This upcoming year, we're going to be putting some programming there. We will use donors' dollars to put partner agencies specifically to work there. So for instance, one of the things that we want to do is use KFACT. We know that they can mentor young girls. We know that they're successful. So it's kind of that clearinghouse model where we understand the integrity and credibility of a nonprofit agency. We will fund them to very specifically work with an identified group of girls at Lincoln Middle School, and then we will track the outcomes. What I think is really important about this shift in model is that we are putting the dollars and the agencies at the most relevant place that we possibly can. I think a lot, and I think it's good for the agencies too, and I hope that they would say that. A lot of agencies are set up to do good in the community, but we keep doing what we've been doing, and unfortunately things don't necessarily change or change as rapidly as we would like them to. So United Way wants to be at the forefront of connecting resources from people and nonprofit agencies, putting that together and making real relevant change in a critical need area.
Let me just take 30 seconds. The old model, we were a mile wide and an inch deep. Every program we funded was setting their agenda. We don't think that's the most effective way anymore. So I'd like to think that we're setting the agenda through donor surveys, through statistical surveys. We think we know what the major challenges are in a community. We have decided that we can't address all of them, let's address a few. So instead of having other agencies set the agenda, we're setting the agenda. We are still working through agencies. We're not hiring a big staff. You're not going to find 20, 30 people working. We still work with partners. So we're not putting anybody out of business. We're just changing the way that we're helping to fund their activities, as long as they're channeling their activities into the areas that we think are strategically important in our community. Anything else?
So in the last few years, things like GoFundMe and these other, say, easy, small donation platforms have popped up, and they seem to be pretty popular that, with one single click, you can donate to whatever it is. So I'm curious to see how has that kind of changed your model and, the overall pool of donations. Is there, does the community have an overall set bandwidth for charitable giving, and that bandwidth is now being distributed elsewhere? or is this increasing the bandwidth for a community? How has that kind of changed for you guys with kind of competing with that in a way?
That's a good question. And, you know, you mentioned Janice Fadden. As Janice was leaving town, her advice to the community was, you better do something about all the money that's leaving Rockford. You're losing money every day. And that was, what, 7, 8 years ago when she left? And that was true then, and it's still true. We have money leaving this community, whether it's somebody who sells a business, somebody who's made money in the community and now is moving to Florida. We have a state that is viewed as largely dysfunctional, and it's going to be becoming a higher tax state. And we've got people that are moving to Florida, you know, right now. One of the probably the biggest real estate holders, developers, is establishing residency in Florida to get away from the Illinois tax environment. That doesn't help. And is there a certain bandwidth? You bet there is. And I had one not-for-profit leader who left town about a year and a half ago tell me, I've run out of people to call for money. You know, I mean, it's now, there are people that have not yet identified themselves as capable of giving, and we hope that they do. There are people that there's been a transfer of wealth from generations. We hope they identify themselves. We hope that they make local challenges a priority. Yes, they need mosquito netting in South America. Yes, they need clean water in sub-Saharan Africa. But man, we've got middle school kids that are living in dire poverty and need help and support so they can be successful in school. And why do we want them successful in school? Because they're gonna hopefully stay in Rockford and be contributing members of our community. And so yeah, GoFundMe can be neat and attractive and everything else, but I hope that donors look for what are the important things in the community, and can we keep it local, and can we work with responsible organizations that have a track record of being effective. And I think that donors have to do a certain due diligence every time they part with a dollar. But yeah, we're keeping up with it. We have text to give. We have the donate button. You know, we have, there's a thing out there United Way Worldwide is pushing called Salesforce Philanthropy Cloud, that if set up will give everybody their own portal on charitable giving, and it'll keep track of your money and your time, and you can set up your own group to address homelessness or some other issue. It's a technology that's developing. So yeah, we're trying to keep up with that.
Oh, God. Okay, thank you. So I forgot to say the Girl Scout thing is this weekend, and it supports our outreach programs. But the thing I want to talk about with Owen is, I do donation. People send me, can you donate this, whatever. So if I'm going to donate or buy and somebody sends me a link, if I have to, now I'm a little old, if I have to stand up and go get my credit card, it's gone. But if I can just click here, click my PayPal, click, I donate, I buy much faster if I don't have to get my body off a chair and go find so I think for purchasing, so if you have a company and you don't have it linked to some model, and it doesn't have to be PayPal, but some model where somebody doesn't have to stand, and change that, let's change it from standing to change what I'm doing now, because you know the email goes down, the text goes down, and it may not rise to my surface again. But if I can do it now, I'm much more likely to buy the product or donate, but if I don't have to leave that activity to go, because I'm going to just keep going with my email and think, oh, later when I have this with me, I'll do that. And the percentage of times I do that. So I think I'm not sure if I'm alone in that kind of thinking, but I think that's a model that's relatively new.
Yeah, that's a super important point, and something that I probably should have mentioned. Just the more steps there are in the donation process, the more donors you're going to lose in that process. So you want to make donating as easy as possible. So when we talk about 27% of people are inspired to give through email. If you're sending out an email that's purpose is to inspire them to give, there should be a link that directly takes you to the page where you click, I want to donate $15. And like you said, if they're going to be a PayPal option, it's that much easier, because if they have to type in all their credit card information, not only are some people just turned off by that, just off, the theft of possibly their information, but it's just another step and it's more work for them. So the easier the process is to donate, the better results you're going to get from it.
We've got a question online from Diane, who, as a follow-up maybe to this last answer, are you sensing any donation weariness from the number of private requests and ability to reach out on social media?
Yes. No, yeah, people are assailed by the number of requests they have. I feel badly for the company that has a profile, and I can't. And I'll talk to the business owners that are getting, 3 or 4 or 5 requests a week for a golf play day sponsorship and a sponsorship for an event. I mean, it's daunting. So there is a certain amount of donor fatigue. No question about it.
I think, and this is a recent thing, I heard that people are really tired of email and things that come across their email so much that there is a resurgence in print mail, that people are actually looking at their mail now instead of their email because, we all know how much junk you get tired of it, and who wants to look at it?
We've got time for one more question.
Or comment. Or answer. We're looking for answers too. Any answers?
Kind of got a follow-up on, say, the whole GoFundMe concept that people seem to be buying into now. Why are people buying into that kind of giving now? Say, someone gets cancer and they set up their own GoFundMe for, help me pay for my cancer treatment when, perhaps there's established charities out there with dedicated resources that are focused on doing something like that. I mean, why do you think people are buying into that now? Or is it a symptom of the charities aren't connecting with the users, or how does that work?
I think it's the strength of a story, and it's the strength of the heart. And a lot of those GoFundMe pages tell an incredible story. They talk about little Jimmy and talk about his problems and what he needs or whatever, and it touches your heart. I mean, it's I don't think it's a mystery anymore. It's just it's a way that something is communicated. We know the strength of a story. I mean, we know that if you can touch somebody's heart, that's where the workplace campaign was hugely effective, when we'd bring in a couple of agencies and we'd tell some stories and people that feel it. I mean, we've done a video where we'd look out there and people are kind of dabbing away the tears when we show the need, okay? So GoFundMe is actually, as much as, now and then there's a scam, but it's I hate to say this in a way because it's competition, but it's a positive thing in terms of it's touching a heart and telling a great story.
All right. Well, let's give our panelists a round of applause. Yeah. Special thanks to Paul, Linda, Grant, and Owen for this panel discussion. I hope you walked away with something valuable. Also, we do want to honor you folks for taking your time to be here at 1 Million Cups. Everybody who is brave enough to stand up in front of this live studio audience and our folks online receives this 1 Million Cups coffee mug.
Wonderful.
Yours
Thank
coming in
you.
from the side there. Well, if you have any answers for United Way and for these fine folks up here on how to engage with the community and how to operate in this world of changing technology and communication mediums and how people engage with their own resources and give it away to others, this is your opportunity right after this. Also, it's your opportunity to enjoy a fine, beautiful, sunny Wednesday. Next Wednesday, June 5th, we have Lauren Davis from Culture Shock, who will be with us presenting what they are doing. Thank you for joining us here at 1 Million Cups. Go and be friendly to your neighbor. How's that, Nathan? Sounds great. All right. Thanks for coming.